And you've just heard Consolation by Flichterin, and I'm delighted to be joined now by Sam McAdam and Ariana Ranieri, who are Flichterin. Hello, both.
Hello.
Hello.
So, Sam, first of all, what can you tell us about Consolation? How did that come about?
So it's actually had a bit of a meandering journey. It started off. Okay, no, I need to actually do a bit of a backstory. So when I first moved in here, I didn't realize just how bad the soundproofing is in a tenement. I was thinking, lovely old building, thick walls, great, off I go. It turns out if you are practicing 8 bars of Wagner again and again and again at about 6 a.m., your neighbors are really quite angry with you, which is totally fair. And we don't do that anymore. So we arranged like a time, quite a generous portion of time when playing music loudly on the harp is acceptable. And that was all good. And then I think the next day they had a really raucous party till about 3 a.m. And I was thinking, oh man, that's so unfair. So I took my guitar underneath where they were having their party very quietly, not to like cause a fuss or anything, but then was like, I can get some composing done. So I made this song, which is kind of about just the trials of living in close proximity until you're fully used to it. And then sort of kind of put that song to bed. And then later on, I actually arranged the song for solo Classic and played it at my end of year exam. And again, after I'd done that, kind of just finished with it, was like, great, done that one. And then when it came to writing something for us to play, I was looking at my old compositions and thinking, maybe I'll get some inspiration from it. And I saw Consolation and I thought, oh, I bet that sounds really nice on viola and harp. And here we are.
And it does.
Thank you.
So, Ariana, this is your first release as Flichterin, but you've been working together before, yeah?
Yes, we have. We worked together on some projects with a collective that we're both a part of called Women in Chamber Music. And what was really fun about that was we were able to bring more to just chamber music, to just traditional repertoire. So with Sam's original composition and some traditional Scottish music that we'd worked on together, we performed a few times and been on tour together before. So it's nice to officially have a duo name because we had been playing together for a while, and I think we really enjoy the sounds that we're able to get from working together.
And so in terms of working together as Flichterin, is that something you kind of wanted to do for a long time, or to do something just the two of you? Was that something that was there, and then you went and, as you say, you kind of looked through stuff that was already there and thought this will work?
I think when I really enjoyed working together when we were part of Women in Chamber Music. And then because that was running so full on for so long, it was almost like there wasn't any creative space to do anything, which was just the two of us. So actually, because Women in Chamber Music is having a short pause at the moment, there's suddenly a lot more creative space and time to really explore things, rather than we're going on tour, we need to find some repertoire and make some repertoire. We can really take our time to work on our sound and make it really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was quite full on, and yeah, I think having the space and the time to not even just like rehearse, but also just play around with different sounds, play around with different rhythms and textures, I think is really what starts to define your sound as a duo or a group.
And what's the process of working together? How, you're talking to someone who's not a musician at all. So, how do you begin to work on something new like this?
So what we've done in the past, and kind of our go-to, is I'll come up with something or an arrangement and loosely split it between the two voices. And then when we're rehearsing on it, we'll refine it, or we'll play something and I'll think, oh, that's not quite working, I need to do something differently there. And then Ariana will try something and be like, oh, what about this? And it'll sound amazing on the viola, so we can kind of mix it up from there. So I feel like it's really collaborative.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I think we're not too shy in saying, oh, I don't want I don't want this sound, or, oh, can we get a ghostly sound there? Or, you know, can we get sort of like a supernatural sound here? You know, we really just kind of play around with it. And I think not being too boxed in and trying to stay with the norms. I think we're quite happy to explore, which I think makes it really fun to do.
So in that sense, do you have to kind of be on the same wavelength and kind of understand such language, you know, when it's perhaps not strictly musical language, when it's more kind of ethereal, if you like, do you have to kind of have that understanding?
Ooh, I don't know. I think sometimes I say some absolute nonsense, and it does take a while to kind of work out exactly what I mean and what I'm aiming for. But I think as long as communication is good, I think that's the great thing, is that we're both so open and we're both just looking to have a great time and just get creative with it, that if we don't know what we mean at the start, then either eventually we will know what we mean, or there'll be a happy accident, which again, we'll hear something and we'll think, ooh, that's not what I meant at all, but I really like that. And then that again gives another kind of route into the creative process.
Or like, yeah, sometimes we just try things. We'll be like, well, let's just try it again. Let's just try something new, try something different. I'm like, yes, that, let's do that. That was really good. There was something about that was really awesome. Let's try that again. And so it just kind of, yeah, essentially putting yourself in the middle of the forest and just seeing what you find eventually is kind of sometimes the process. But I think it leaves a lot of room for really amazing things to happen because it's unexpected. So
I think as well, just before this interview, we were rehearsing what will hopefully be our next single, but also it's just a arrangement which I love to play. And we were working on a section, and I knew there was something that it wasn't quite sitting right, but neither of us could work out what it was until eventually, like after about 20 minutes of just these same 4 bars of trying to get them to sit right. And then we kind of stumbled upon what it needed in order to properly flow.
Yeah.
And that's quite a nice moment when you're working on something, and it would sound fine without that work. Like it would sound beautiful. People would be like, oh, it's lovely. But actually, you know that there's something missing, and being able to find that little bit of magic that you're like, yes, that's the one. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that's really interesting because as a lay person, if you like, I would imagine, and I think a lot of people think, that rehearsal is about playing the same thing and getting it tighter and tighter and better. But what you're suggesting is it's in rehearsal where new things can happen and happy accidents occur, and that can change the final thing. So you're not just like practicing. If you were doing anything else, you would practice 10,000 hours or whatever it might be, over and over again, repetition. You've got the kind of openness to try new things, or maybe just discover new things.
I think so. And I think as well, for me, I'm not the most careful or intentional of composers. So I'll compose something and write it down, but it's not set in stone. Like I don't mind if people make it up. I don't mind if people want to improve upon it, like go wild with it. So I think when we're in rehearsal and trying out stuff, that's when I actually can hear what's going on.
Yeah, and I think too, like for me, because I was brought up so classically trained, actually being in a rehearsal space where it's not just about like tightening, it's about getting a chance to be creative. And sometimes Sam will say like, yeah, think of something here, like try something there, like just go for it. I wasn't used to that at first, when we started playing together. And so she brought out this really creative side of me, this I think this willing to just kind of say, caution to the wind, just do what feels right there, just go for it. And I think that it does make the rehearsal experience very different, but I think the results are just so much fun. They're and I do think that's what makes it different than other things. So, and
do you think that comes from different traditions? Because I'm imagining that a kind of folk tradition is exactly that. The tracks might be played in a different place, the same songs on night upon night, whereas classical, I'm guessing, it is that kind of stricter way of learning a piece of music. Is that, you think, Sam, that's a kind of combination of the two?
I think partly, but I mean, I was also brought up in the classical tradition, but I think I've just never had the brain which likes to repeat something again and again and again until it's perfect. I think, unfortunately for me, I'm quite like a last minute approximation kind of a person, and it works really well with creative projects like this, but not so well when you're maybe given a piece of music and have to play it and the composer wants it written as it has to be. So yeah, it's definitely got its upsides.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that doesn't mean, yeah, in classical music that they're not as spontaneous, but yeah, maybe in folk music you have a little more leeway there, and I think maybe it's generally more appreciated in folk music.
It's something, having spoken to quite a lot of jazz musicians over the years, that kind of improvisation, even, you know, or on stage, is something that they kind of really excites them, you know, changing these things. I was going to say, you're both graduates of the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, and is that a place which encourages kind of crossing genres, or is that something you kind of develop separately?
Well, I think it probably is a place that does encourage that. When I was there, I had this tunnel vision in my degree, and to some extent that was probably me and my choice as well. I do think that I was able personally to collaborate with, you know, pianists and other string players, but I had no experience with the trad department until, well, and Sam wasn't even really part of the trad department when I started playing with her, because you'd already graduated. So when I was there, I didn't actually play with Sam or anyone in the trad department. So I think perhaps there's a lot of collaboration generally that happens in the classical part of the school, and then there's the traditional part of the school. I'm not actually sure how much the two mix, because from my experience, I didn't have that. So
yeah, and they definitely have a module in first year which everyone has to do, which is about intercollaborative practice.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that they would love to happen.
Yeah. And I did, but maybe it's something that happens with people where they meet outside of, you know, college or university hours, and they meet up and they discuss and these things happen. Because it does seem to me that at the moment in Scottish music in particular, there is a lot of what I'm going to call cross-genre collaborations. People, you know, folk and classical, hip hop and jazz, you know, whatever it might be, indie and hip, you know, there's all sorts of things going on, which is really lovely, I think, because I don't think it was necessarily always that way.
I would definitely say there's a lot of networking that goes on in the pub, and I think that's how it happens. And there's so much creativity and creative people in and around the RCS that actually, if you get them all into a pub situation and everyone knows each other, and then mostly in like final years, I think, or when people are graduating and they have the time and the space in order to do it, I think they've met their network and they know their people, and I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
And it's the same as many universities, I know, in kind of literature departments and stuff. That's where they really, you know, the poem anthologies or the whatever it might, short story workshops get together rather than kind of during the actual classes. That's really interesting to hear. In a moment, we're going to hear Golden Toad by the Willow Trio, which I didn't know, Sam, before you mentioned it. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so The Golden Toad was originally written in 2021 for an album which the proceeds were for lost species, and I can't quite remember what the charity was that it went to. But I wrote a piece inspired by the Golden Toad, who was last sighted in 1989. And they used to live in a really small, about 1.5 kilometers square of elfin rainforest. And they were last sighted in 1989, and probably due to a mixture of deforestation and climate change. So yeah, I just tried to make the harps sound as toad-like as possible. And yeah, just you get the little toad sort of hopping along with the original motif. And then at some point the toad goes into a bit of a dream sequence, which is quite nice and woozy. And then at the end you just hear him hopping away.
That's fantastic. Sounds like a lovely project, actually. A really lovely idea.
It's a really, like, the album's available on Bandcamp, and I'd highly suggest people have a listen to it because it's got about 15 or 16 different tracks by different artists on it, and it covers all genres, and yeah, it's really, really cool.
And is there anything else that either of you are working on that you'd like to mention? Or is it all Flichterin at the moment?
Oh, like what we're working on individually.
Yeah.
Well, I play in another duo as well with within our Women in Chamber Music. I also play with the pianist Mionora Kussanen with the Kussanen Ranieri duo, and then I'm also working on my PhD in community music and pedagogy. So very busy times, but it's good to be playing and teaching and, you know, doing all kinds of music. So sometimes I subscribe myself to projects, but it's just because there's so much cool stuff going on that you don't want to say no. So I know Sam definitely knows what I'm talking about with that type of thing. But I'd say that's the most of what I'm working on just now. And I'm on a bit of a break. I actually just had my son 8 weeks ago. So thank you. So you'll see in actually the cover for the picture that I'm 7 months along. So what a nice way to commemorate such a special time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But no, it's been a very busy but very exciting not just last several months, but last few years, and I'm really excited to see with, you know, what we do together and come up with together, because I think it's a really nice collaboration, viola and harp. And also playing anything with Sam is also very special. So as you'll know, because you've had her on the show before. So
absolutely. And Sam, you mentioned that you're working on something which may be the next release. Is that the plan? Or what's the longer term plans?
So we're going to have a little duo meeting after this chat, but I'm going to suggest that we start working on an EP because we've got enough material for it and some really cool compositions. We're playing at the Fringe on the 17th of August at the Acoustic Music Centre. So you'll be able to hear an hour's worth of music from us.
Brilliant. Oh, that'll be great. I might try and come along to that. That's great.
Please do. And then you can stay for Maya's Radio Orchestra. And that's my solo project, which is happening straight afterwards at the same
afterwards. Well, it would be rude not to, wouldn't it?
I'll be there.
Yeah. And of course, clearly you want to talk about doing an EP with Ariana is doing a PhD and has got a baby as well. Just, you know, throwing everything you can.
It's one of those things though. It's like, you got to keep going, you know? I think that's so important. You know, life doesn't stop. You have to keep going. And so I actually really appreciate getting the chance to continue to make music. So thank you, Sam, because that's also, that's really good. It's just for your whole well-being, I think, to get to continue to do what you love, even in very chaotic times.
Well, Sam and Ariana, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you for having us. It was lovely to speak with you.
Lovely to speak with you. Thank you so much.
And this is the Willow Trio and Golden Toad.